My name is William Tatum. I am 70 years old, and at my own birthday dinner, in a room full of 31 people who loved me, I watched my son's face change in 8 seconds. He stood up to talk about the house, my house, the one his mother and I had built a life inside for over 30 years. He tapped his glass, he smiled, he said the word honest, and the room believed him. I reached into my jacket, I pulled out a folder, I slid it down the table until it stopped in front of him. He opened it, his face went through 4 different versions of itself in less time than it takes to say his name. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe, drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to a July afternoon in 2022, when my wife said something to me on our back porch that I did not understand until the night I finally used what was inside that folder. Carolyn Ruth Tatum smelled like the library she worked in for 26 years, old paper, faint lemon polish, and the particular dust that collects on books nobody has checked out in a decade but somebody still loves. That smell lived in our house on Mullins Cove Road the way some houses smell like coffee or cut grass. Ours smelled like her. We bought that house in 1989, a 4-bedroom craftsman on half an acre, backing up to a tree line that turned gold in October and let in a particular kind of late afternoon light that Carolyn said made the whole house feel like it was breathing slower. I spent 31 years as a systems engineer at Redstone Arsenal, working on propulsion and guidance systems where a wiring fault you don't catch in testing becomes a failure you can't take back. That discipline followed me home. I noticed things I still do. Carolyn noticed people the way I noticed systems. She had a habit, one I didn't fully understand until years later, of writing things down before she needed them, not shopping lists, observations. Little half-page notes about our children, tucked into notebooks she kept on the shelf beside her reading chair, the one with the worn left armrest where her hand used to rest. I remember one Sunday dinner, maybe 2015, the smell of her pot roast filling the kitchen, the sound of ice settling in the tea pitcher. Our son Mitchell mentioned, almost carelessly, that a house like ours would probably sell well right now. Carolyn didn't answer, she just refilled his glass and changed the subject. I didn't think anything of it. She did. That evening, after the dishes were dried and put away, she sat on the back porch with her hand on that worn armrest and looked out at the tree line for a long time before she said, "William, when I'm gone, watch what Mitchell does in the first year, not the first month." The first year. I asked her what she meant. She just squeezed my hand and said I'd know when the time came. I didn't understand it then. I filed it away, the way you file away a sound in a machine that isn't quite right yet, but isn't wrong enough to stop for. Carolyn died in September of 2022, ovarian cancer. 14 months between the diagnosis and the funeral, 14 months of watching someone leave you 1 degree at a time. So that grief never fully arrives until one Tuesday morning. It is the only thing left in the house. 2 weeks after her funeral, before the flowers on her grave had even wilted, Mitchell called and asked if I had updated my estate documents since Mom passed. He asked it gently. He asked it like a son checking on his father. But I had spent 31 years learning to hear the difference between a question that wants an answer and a question that's measuring something. His wife, Suzanne, started coming by on Sunday afternoons with a container of food she never fully unpacked, always finding a reason to walk through 3 or 4 rooms before she left, pausing in doorways a beat too long, looking at the crown molding, the floors, the light through the windows, assessing, not visiting. One evening in late October, I came downstairs for water and heard Mitchell on the back porch, talking low into his phone. I wasn't meant to hear it. He said the word situation. He said resolving itself. He said a number, a big one, like it was already real. That's the word they use. I remember thinking situation, that's the word for everything that used to be love. I didn't confront him. I went back upstairs, sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, and finally understood what Carolyn had meant on that porch. I wasn't angry, yet I was becoming something quieter and more useful than angry. I was becoming ready. The first winter after Carolyn died, I finally opened the notebooks she kept beside her chair. What I found wasn't grief, it was a plan, hers, written years before she ever got sick, in the same careful handwriting she used to catalog library archives. There was an entry from 2014, half a page long, about Mitchell. She hadn't written it in anger, she'd written it the way she wrote everything, precise, observant, ahead of its time. 8 years later, it read like a description of a man I was only now fully seeing. I called our attorney, Margaret Oates, 5 weeks after the funeral, Margaret had handled our estate planning since 2014 and had a habit of listening with a legal pad she barely wrote on. Because she was storing what you said rather than transcribing it, I told her everything: the notebooks, the porch conversation, the doorway visits, the overheard call. She was quiet for a moment, then she said the house was the center of gravity for everything I was describing, and that the house was where we needed to start. The Tatum Family Trust had existed since 2014, but the house had never formally been placed inside it. In December of 2022, that changed. The deed was transferred, clean, legal, permanent, recorded quietly at the county courthouse where no one but a person specifically looking would ever find it. I remained trustee. My daughter, Renee, became sole beneficiary of the property. Margaret also prepared something else, a notarized accounting of every dollar I had given Mitchell since 2015. Loans he called temporary, investments he called opportunities, a down payment he never once mentioned repaying. $84,000, documented, dated, undeniable. This changes the picture considerably, Margaret said, looking at the final number. I know, I said. She looked up at me. Are you prepared for what he's going to do when he understands the house isn't available? I thought about 31 years of testing systems that had no room for a second chance. I texted Margaret 2 words that night: we're ready. Margaret laid the plan out for me the way you'd walk someone through a blueprint, simply, in order, so there was no room to misread it. The folder, 32 pages, tabbed, indexed, the deed, the accounting, every date lined up like rivets. In August, Mitchell came by with 2 coffees and a rehearsed kind of warmth. He mentioned, casually, that a colleague of his had informally asked about properties on our street. He said he wasn't suggesting anything, just wanted me to have the full picture. I told him I appreciated him sharing that. I told him the house wasn't something I was thinking about changing. Of course, he said, just wanted you to know. He left with the energy of a man who believes he's planted something and is simply waiting for it to grow. My daughter, Renee, was the one who noticed something was wrong before anyone else did. Dad, she said on the phone one night, I'm worried about Mitchell. I can't prove anything, I just feel it. She was right to feel it. I told her everything 2 months before the birthday dinner, sitting at the same kitchen table where Carolyn and I had sat for 30 years. She didn't interrupt once when I finished. She asked only, what do you need from me? That night, after she'd gone to bed in her old room, I sat alone on the back porch where Carolyn used to sit, my hand resting where hers used to rest, on the worn armrest. I wish this were different. I wish Mitchell had been the kind of son who called because he missed his father, instead of a son who called to measure what he might inherit. I wish he had grieved his mother the way Renee did, fully, quietly, without calculation. But wishes don't hold up. A house, documents do. I cried a little that night, not from weakness, from the particular clarity of finally seeing something all the way through. It was 11:50 p.m. on a Thursday, 3 days before the dinner. The house was silent the way houses only get after everyone else has gone to sleep. I sat alone at my desk with one lamp on and my laptop open, a video call connecting to Margaret's office. We went through the folder one final time, page by page, tab by tab. She confirmed everything was recorded, everything was airtight, everything was ready to be placed in front of a man who did not yet know it existed. You're doing the right thing, William, she said, for Carolyn, for Renee, for yourself. I signed the final authorization at 12:03 a.m. 12:03 a.m. I am 70 years old. I am the trustee of everything my wife and I built, and in 3 days, my son is going to find out he was never in control of any of it. Across town, in a house he and Suzanne had bought with money that was never fully his, Mitchell was almost certainly asleep, dreaming about a sale that had already been decided, just not in the direction he thought. He'll find that out in about 72 hours. The dinner was everything a 70th birthday should be. 31 people at a long table on Whitesburg Drive, my brother telling old stories, my former colleague from Redstone laughing too loud, Renee's toast that I'll keep for myself for 90 minutes. It was simply a good, warm night, and I let myself have it fully. Then Mitchell stood. He tapped his glass. He said he wanted to talk about the house, about honesty, about gratitude, about the future. The room went still in that particular way a room goes still when it senses the ground shifting beneath a celebration. I reached into my jacket. I set the folder on the table. I slid it down toward him without a word. He opened it. Confusion first, then recognition, then the look of a man realizing the confrontation he'd prepared for months had already been prepared for, by someone else, first. He looked up at me the way you look at someone you thought you still had time to outmaneuver. He hadn't for over a year. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, The house belongs to the trust now, it always will. Then I picked my fork back up and returned to my dinner, because 31 people were still waiting to eat cake. He sat down, he didn't say another word for the rest of the night. Carolyn used to say, "Watch what Mitchell does in the first year." Not the first month. I always thought she meant I'd see grief turn into something uglier. What she really meant was that grief reveals people slowly, and if you're patient, truly patient, you'll see exactly who someone is before they ever get the chance to hurt you with it. Mitchell and Suzanne sold their own house 18 months later and moved to Georgia. We speak twice a year, politely, at a distance. Neither of us has tried to close. Margaret still handles the trust, still calls every spring just to check in. Renee comes down from Nashville most months, and some Sundays we sit on that same back porch, in Carolyn's old chair, and she rests her hand exactly where her mother's used to rest. As for me, I still have the house. The tree line still turns gold every October. I sit out there most evenings now, and I think about a woman who saw all of this coming 8 years before it happened, and loved us all anyway, and protected us anyway, quietly, on paper, long after she was gone. If you've ever had to stay silent to protect what mattered most, even when everything in you wanted to speak, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe to Dad's Revenge Tales. There are more to come.